All right, what's up, guys? Here we are, chapter 4. We're looking at the context of the organization. So remember the social cognitive theory, right? Persons, their brain, their heart, their affections. There's behavior, what they do, and there's the context in which they do it. So this is looking at the context and really looking at how we set up reward systems. We'll go through the things that we normally go through, history, what do we really need to know, how do people screw it up, and then what if you want more. So the history, this is pretty funny. Remember, OB is a lot of just psychology of the individual in the context of an organization. So employee rewards, really just rewards, incentives for humans in voluntary transactions. That is, I'll give you, it's like my kids play Heyday right now. Like the other day he asked to someone if they had like a carrot pie or something. I don't even know, weird stuff. Anyway, wheat and cheese and all that. I'll give you this, you give me that, right? So we're trying to sweeten the deal. And with employees, we're basically saying we give your time and your talents and your mind, and we're going to pay you money for that. That's the transaction. So this really predates currency. It's been around since two people are there and one person has something the other one wants. Initially, right, it's a form of trade. You might trade labor for things. But really scientifically, this came into focus early on in 20th century, I guess, behaviorism. So that is, we figured out if we pay people 5 cents a weed for every weed they pull, they tend to pull more weeds than if we pay them $1 an hour. So it's how we pay people affects the mind, heart, labor, all that kind of stuff a lot more than simply how much we pay people. Behaviorism was a big part of that. So what do we need to know? Motivation comes from this Greek word, just moher. It just means to move. It just means you're going to do something. And what we're going to do as a company is try to treat you in a certain way that makes you want to do the right things, pay you in a certain way that makes you want to do the right things. And when I say right, what we're looking for something is mutually beneficial, right? Something that there's a thing called a balance scorecard. So it benefits the individual. They make more money, in a sense they have more freedom to do what they want with it. It benefits the organization because the things are getting done that the organization needs to flourish. It benefits the community, benefits the environment, etc., customers, suppliers. So we're trying to set up these systems. This is where the complexity comes in, because I can make somebody do something that helps me and exploits them, or vice versa. But we're trying to set it up where everybody actually gets to win. And that's one of the challenges with creating reward systems. Specifically, what are we rewarding? Are we rewarding the right thing? You really have 3 tools as a manager: money, feedback, and recognition. Everybody likes feedback, pretty much everybody likes recognition, and pretty much everybody likes money. So we can use those things as positive reinforcement. In behaviorism, there's really 4 modes. There's positive reinforcement. You give somebody something when they do something good to try to get them to do that good thing again. There's negative reinforcement, where you're trying to get things out of the way that stop them from doing what you want. There's punishment, right? I think we all know what that is. You put in something negative to get them to stop doing it. Or there's extinction. And this is again a bit tricky. Imagine like the 7th grader who sits in the middle of class and never shuts up, and you get them in trouble and you kick them out of the classroom. Well, they actually got rewarded. They got what they want. You positively reinforce it because they wanted attention. So usually in that scenario, you might use extinction and ignore them kind of wherever possible. But anyway, you get the idea. Money, feedback, and recognition are the tools that you have. And the biggest thing is these 3 steps. Identify what it is that you want. I don't care if you're, a mechanic running a garage. I don't care if you're running Google. What are the things that you want this position to do specifically? What do you want it to produce? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The next thing is you have to be able to measure those results. How's it going right now? Sales is easy. Everybody knows that. That's fine. Revenue, new contracts, customer retention. There's all kinds of metrics in there. But on service jobs, it gets a little bit more tricky to nail down what it is that you actually want, which is why at the end of phone calls with Verizon, someone says, have I addressed all your questions? And if you were to get a survey on a scale of 1 to 5, could you give me a 5? That's just trying to measure success in a service context. Once you can do these 2 things, you know what you want and you're able to measure it, then it's step 3, which is the final step. You want to pay for those things specifically. Don't pay like the university pays me. I show up, I have a pulse. If I do a really good job today on this lecture, it doesn't change my life at all. If I screw it up and make everybody dumber, I don't get any less money, right? That's not a good way to do it. Paying someone just to have a pulse and to show up. You really want to tie them to the outcomes that you care about. Two different modes that we think of with that. One of them is base pay, one of them is merit pay. Base pay is what you get for showing up and doing the job, at least minimum standards. Merit pay is when you're doing step 3 there, when you're doing things that actually are what the organization wants. Paying for performance, it's tricky, it's difficult. A lot of jobs. I remember when I first graduated from college, I had a job they offered me a job in Europe. You can make a whole bunch of money, and it was all sales based, and there was no base pay. There was basically no guaranteed wage. You had to just earn it. And the other one, I got offered a job at Boeing where it was like nice, steady pay. It wasn't high, but it was fine. And benefits and, hard to get fired, stuff like that. I ended up taking that one. And as it tells you about my level of comfort with risk right there. But the more you can do pay for performance, again, what do we want done? How do we measure it? And then tying pay to it, you come up with some creative ideas. Piece rate is where you get paid for each thing that you do. So if you're selling cell phones, you get $50 per cell phone. I worked a job in high school. I got 10 cents a bale for baling hay. You can make as much money as you want. You can bale the entire valley, or you can stop after 4 or 5 hours, but that's all you're getting paid for. Piece rate is pay for performance. Commissions on sales, bonuses, stock options. They're a little bit more tricky. There's a little bit more to it. But stock options is basically a retention tool. That's where if you're coming to work for me, I'd say, hey, look, you're doing a great job, and I want to keep you here. So I'm going to give you the option to buy stock in the future at a discounted rate. If you quit, you're not going to get that option. You forfeit it. But if you stay here and stock price goes up, you can eventually make a lot of money. Amazon, Microsoft, Google were really popular with that early on. That's at an individual level. Okay, so these are individual level incentive pay plans. Up at a group level, it's a little different, and you know this if you've ever worked on a group project for school, right? There's always what's called a free rider, somebody who doesn't do a whole lot because they know you're just going to get a good grade. You're going to get through it just fine and carry them. So there's a really popular article. Well, I don't know if it's popular anymore. It's popular amongst nerds. It was back in the 90s, I think. It's called The Folly of Rewarding A and Hoping for B. And the idea is like this. If there's a group project and I want you all to work together, and I give you individual grades, there's no motivation to work together. If I give you a group grade, that's a group incentive, that's better in terms of working together, but you're more likely to have free riders because somebody else will just carry the group. So group pay works, but almost only in conjunction with individual pay. So I can't pay you as an individual and expect you to work as a team. I can't pay you as a team and not expect a bunch of free riders. So we like to do both if we can. What this usually looks like is individual level base pay, maybe some merit, but then group bonuses or group incentives. Some other pay techniques. This, again, if you can measure this, it works. First one, easy to measure. Commissions, sales, you have a sales quota, you go above, you make more, we get that. Rewarding leadership effectiveness. That's a little bit squishier. You have to agree on the metrics of what that is. Sometimes you'll pay people, looking at the fourth one down there, for what they know, not necessarily even what they do. This sort of goes against behaviorism, but this is the idea where, hey, we want to break into Southern California and we need a bunch of employees that speak Spanish. So we're going to give you an extra $2 an hour if you speak Spanish here at Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out or whatever it happens to be. Recognition is frequently overlooked. So there's a marriage book out there called Love Languages, right? Figure out what love language you are. I'm a words of affirmation guy. I don't really care about gifts. My wife's a gifts person. You can see how this goes. She gets me a nice gift and I'm like, cool, thanks. But am I good looking? Like, do you like me? Am I a good husband? Am I a good dad? Am I a hard worker? Stuff like that. I want to hear it from her. That means more to me than anything else. Some people are not wired that way, and that's okay. But a lot of people are, and almost nobody doesn't like recognition. So recognition can be in the form of gifts. It can be in the form of words, letters, like whatever it is. But usually it's a lot cheaper and a lot less political than giving someone a raise. So if someone does something good, you reinforce it, positively reinforce it with some kind of recognition. Now, here's the catch. It has to be a recognition they actually see as a recognition. I was working with a guy, super high power distance, he's a Vietnamese engineer, and I remember publicly celebrating him many times. The guy was freaking brilliant. Publicly celebrating him many times, and until finally one of his buddies told me, like, dude, you're humiliating him. And I'm thinking, how is this humiliating him? I'm telling everybody what a great job he's doing. He's like, he hates public attention. So I'm actually punishing him for doing the right thing, and I think I'm rewarding him. So the trick here is you got to make sure the recognition that you're giving is actually seen as a reward by the person who's getting it. In addition to pay and recognition, there are benefits. Benefits these days are typically, a lot of them anyway, are typically seen more as entitlements. Like, of course I get that. And there are. Benefits are what you get for being a member of an organization. Some of them are mandated. Like, you as an employer don't have a choice. You're paying Social Security tax. Excuse me. If you don't know what Social Security is, it's basically a company match 401k that is held by the government. So 7.65%, something like that, you put in. So every $100 you pay your employee, you're putting in $7.65, and they're getting taxed out of that, $7.65. So basically doubling their money, and that goes toward their retirement or Social Security. There's Medicare benefits. A lot of people give life insurance, disability insurance, you get hurt on the job. Obviously, health insurance with there's in Washington State, it's paid family medical leave is sort of part of that, but really that's talking about the Affordable Care Act, medical, dental, vision, stuff like that. There are pension benefits, but sort of it's tweaked now. There's not a lot of standard pensions anymore outside of a unionized organization. So pilots, firefighters, longshoremen, stuff like that. So if there's a heavy union presence and the union's been around for a while, they'll probably have a pension. If not, they'll probably have what's called a 401k, or for a state organization, it's a 403b. Think of that like Social Security on steroids, except it's privatized. So if you come to work for me, we have a 401k, let's say there's some company matching. I'm going to put 7.65% into Social Security. You're going to put that in. But then I'll tell you, hey, up to like 15% of your income, you can put money into your retirement, to 401k, and I'll match that. Either every dollar you put in, I'll put in 50 cents, or every dollar, maybe I'll put in a whole dollar, whatever it is. And that will be your private account. That's not held by the government. That's held by you, like Fidelity, or somebody's going to be the holder of that. You'll meet with somebody once a year and figure out what investments to go in. So the standard pension of you work here for 20 years, you get a gold watch and $2,500 a month, that's not around so much anymore, but 401k is obviously very popular. And people do it on their own too with IRAs, individual retirement account, basically the same thing. 401k is held by or sponsored by a company, and IRA is the individual itself. Time off benefit, you can give these things. You don't have to. If you don't have to, you won't be competitive. Or if you don't do it, you won't be competitive in the labor market. In some states, you have to give time off, paid time off, like Washington State. In some states, there can be unpaid time off, family medical leave, for instance, Family Medical Leave Act. But vacation is, for the most part, usually up to the organization. 10 days, 10 working days is pretty standard for the first year. It's 2 weeks. And a lot of people use an accrual method. So for every 40 hours of work that you do, you get an hour of paid time off. Well, take that over a year. 2,080 hours is full time, 52 weeks-ish. Then you got 52 hours if you work for a year, which is, a little over a week. So accrual method, or you can just give it to them, or there's also a vesting method. After you've worked here for 1 year, then we give you this paid time off. Do you have, this question comes up a lot, do you have to pay that time out at the end? You don't necessarily have to. It depends on how you write the policy, but you will. That's the labor market. Sometimes people will pay it out at 50%, but usually you'll pay it out, and it might be included in part of a severance package if somebody quits. If not, they'll just use up their vacation before they go, most likely. Okay, a lot of companies are now doing wellness programs, especially post-COVID. You have stress, languishing, right? You have loneliness, all that kind of stuff. Wellness programs can be in conjunction with what's called an EAP, an employee assistance program. And that's basically people like me, like HR managers, saying, hey, look, if people are healthy, right, if their marriages are intact, if financially they met with a financial advisor, they have a plan to get out of debt, whatever it is, they're going to be better at work. They're going to be more focused. The outside stuff isn't going to distract them. That's not just a win for them. That's also a win for me as a company. That's a mutually beneficial transaction. So I'm going to contract with a wellness program. I'm going to give them, gym memberships or whatever it is. Wellness programs, well, EAPs, even broader speaking, can be all kinds of things. It can be access to a lawyer, to family counseling, to drug rehab, therapists, all that kind of stuff. Life cycle benefits, I mentioned this a little bit in chapter 2, but this is such an underlooked thing. It's a really big deal if you can afford it with your company. Google really kind of has led the way on this, where they say we have these incredible mom engineers who we want, and they're saying, I want to be next to my kids. I don't want to miss out special events. And Google's just like, screw it. We're going to build a daycare and a school on the Googleplex on campus. You bring your kid to work. You want to go have lunch with them, go have lunch with them. You want to check in with them at 10 o'clock, go check in with them. You want to pick them up after school, we'll work around your schedule because we want your talent. Okay. That makes sense in a heavily human capital type of industry like a Google. That may not make so much sense for McDonald's, right? So when you're relying on that person, and that's a rare talent and it's a core competency, when you're relying on that person for your business, you may be looking at something like childcare or even giving childcare stipends along the way. Cafeteria style benefits. This is similar to life cycle, or same logic, is that when you're 21, usually what you really want is money, and you're not so much caring about benefits. I'm 42. I can probably count on my hands the number of times I've even been to a doctor, and every time with stitches, right? Just don't go. But I'm pretty sure if you want me at 60, I'm going to need some better medical plans at that point, or if you want me at 80 or whatever it is. So the cafeteria style benefits is, hey, here are different options for healthcare or retirement, whatever, that you can choose from. That allows you to attract and retain talent from different generations in the workforce, or people that just have different needs. Where do people screw this up in terms of rewards? Most of the thing is the last thing, but I'll comment on the first three first. Paying too little. There's this old adage, you don't want to pay too little because you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to lose good talent, and all you're going to be left is stuck with is subpar talent. And you don't want to pay too much. If you pay too much, you're actually hurting the business when you don't need to. You're not getting an edge on human talent. So I know that sounds funny, but you don't want to pay too little. You don't want to pay too much. You want to make sure that you're watching your metrics on pay discrimination, and I would add pay effectiveness. What do I mean by this? Continually ask the question, are we paying for the right things? Not paying for the right people. Are we paying for the right behaviors? Does our reward system incentivize the things that we actually want to get done? Second one is on pay discrimination. This one sounds kind of simple, but it's not so simple. There is an argument to be made from the literature that women, for example, are less likely to be aggressive negotiators because of some social stigma attached to that. So they won't negotiate their salary as much as men. And so you go look at your metrics and you're like, snap, we're paying men 20% more than women. Well, that's discrimination, right? And there's moral, there's ethical, there's legal, there's all kinds of problems with that. So when I say watch your metrics, it just means take the average pay of men and women, or within and between races, or military veteran status, or disability status, whatever it is, and just say, are we paying people roughly equally throughout the levels of our company? It doesn't have to be perfectly equal, and don't go in and just quickly change everyone's salaries. But you want to keep an eye on that, especially as you're making offers. You're saying, what are we paying now? What are our metrics now? But the main way that people mess this up is simply paying for the wrong behaviors. I'll use my profession as an example. You have probably had professors that absolutely freaking loved their jobs. They were all in. It was great. And some that just didn't give a crap. And they were using the same PowerPoints they've been using for 15 years. And there was no innovation. There was no passion. There was no care for it. Well, that's because they get paid for showing up and teaching a class. They don't get paid for innovation in the class or really making a difference in students' lives. So you always have to look and go, what are we, not who are we paying or even how much we're paying, what are we paying for? Focusing on that, and you avoid some mistakes. If you want more on this, I'll just point you to a couple of companies. Google and Microsoft are really ahead of the curve on how they pay people. They have to, because if they don't, they lose to their competitors. So this is different by industry, but I'm not saying like everybody should be like Google and Microsoft. I don't mean that, but they've just been really nuanced in how they've approached things like benefits and pay. Ritz-Carlton, they're really known for their culture. Their pay is fine. Their benefits are great. But they've infused pretty amazing culture, and that culture ends up being a benefit. It's a place where you actually want to go to work, much less likely to quit, stuff like that. So hopefully that helps, and see you soon.